Campbell.
And I'm Ron Jackson.
Cerebral conversations on disability liberation and integration. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cerebral Conversations, episode 27. This is Cerebral Conversations, conversations on disability liberation and integration. I'm CJ Campbell.
And I'm Ron Jackson.
Ron, let's get
Cerebral.
boom. So, we've been gone for a little bit, and guess whose fault it is? It's mine. Always my fault.
It's okay. The holiday season was upon us.
Yeah. So, there was Thanksgiving and Hanukkah
Yes.
rolled into one.
Yes.
I don't really have resources to celebrate Hanukkah, so I've never been actually able to celebrate Hanukkah. But anyways.
I heard it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, first things first, do a little housekeeping. So, my body is falling apart, and I have insomnia, which isn't a good mix. So, I had to cancel the chairside chat at the last minute. My apologies. I started to get sick like an hour and a half before. So, it's my fault. And the reason we didn't get a show last week was my fault. Probably everything that goes wrong with this show is my fault.
It's okay.
Or iMovies. But, Ron, how has your week been?
My week has been pretty awesome because it's no longer November, so I was able to shave. Thank God.
Listen, just because it's not November anymore doesn't mean that you had to shave. Let's be clear.
Yes. Anyway, my week has been fun because I had turkey, bingo, and bowling. You can't get much better than that.
Maybe booze. Beer? Was there beer?
Beer could have been involved, but I'm not a beer drinker, as you know.
Yeah, somebody's not a beer drinker. Well, that's awesome. Did you win at bingo?
Yes, and I gave the prize to Antonio.
Tell us who is Antonio?
Antonio is one of my caregiver's sons.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, how'd you do with bowling?
I sucked. I suck at bowling.
I think I do too.
Not only that, but it was Saturday night, so all the leagues were there. So taking 12 crippled people in a crowded bowling alley on a Saturday night is never a good idea. I want to throw that out there.
It's never a good idea to inconvenience the able-bodied people.
Never a good idea.
Nope, they tend to frown upon it.
But other than that, I had a great week.
Awesome. I, didn't really do anything because I can't sleep. And I can't function. Other than that, I just been holed up.
Yeah.
Trying to not go insane from sleep deprivation.
This is literally the first time I've seen CJ in about a week and a half.
Yeah. I'm not doing so hot these days. But we have a great show for you this week.
Yes.
We are actually having another interview.
Yes.
With former Miss Wheelchair Texas, Christy Landwehr.
Yep.
It's a pretty intense conversation. She's a very strong woman. I have a lot of respect for her. Has a lot of interesting opinions. Is a total sweetheart. I think the ladies and gentlemen of the crippled persuasion and the able-bodied as well will appreciate this.
I think so.
Yeah, it's a great conversation, and we'll see you in a little bit. Hey everybody, I am here with my new friend, Christy Landwehr, and we are going to have a bit of an interview to go along with our series on love, sex, and dating at Cerebral Conversations. So I would like to introduce you to Miss Christy Landwehr. Christy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the nature of your disability?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show, CJ. It's really nice to be here and to meet you. Again, my name is Christy Landwehr. I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy around 6 months after I was born. I'm originally from Texas. I've been living here for the last 3.5 years with my husband. We moved up here about 2 or 3 weeks after we got married. So here we are, and it's been great. Back in Texas, I had some really cool, unique opportunities to advocate for people with disabilities. I got to serve as Miss Wheelchair Texas in 2006, and it was a really great experience for me to get out of my shell, and not so much, at the time it was really difficult for me because I wasn't somebody who focused on myself and focused on my disabilities, and I wanted to speak more on pro-life issues because I'm very active in my church, and I knew that I had a gift for speaking, and I was trying to figure out on what avenue God was calling me to speak, and this opportunity came up, and it was difficult at first because I didn't want people to see me for my disability. I wanted them to see me for me, and I knew if I went and won this pageant and had to speak, that I would be bringing attention to my disability. Mm-hmm. And that was something that was very difficult for me to have to do. But it was actually really humbling at the same time because I recognized that, not everybody that has my disability or just a disability in general has the ability to articulate like I can and can act for people who don't have a voice. And I realized just how pro-life that truly was. Mm-hmm. And so...
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely resonate with that. Especially for me, I feel I can almost kind of pass off as an able-bodied person. And so I don't carry a lot of the weight and the stigma of disability like others that I've seen. And for most of my life, I wasn't ashamed of it, but I didn't want to be put in that label. Because often, I'm sure you have this all the time, is that a able-bodied brother or sister will just be like, you know what, you could be a real advocate and help people in your situation. And it's not that we don't want to, but there's so much more things that we're passionate about. For me, it's working towards nonviolence and peace and ending poverty, and those are the things that I'm super passionate about. And eventually I got to a point where I realized that I had to really experience the stigma of disability, and that's when my able-bodiedness kind of ran out on me, and my body broke down a little bit, and I didn't have that job to prove to everyone that I wasn't one of those people on Social Security. And so what has that been like as you make that transition of just, a woman who happens to be in a wheelchair into an advocate? What's that transition been like?
Well, actually, it's been a growing experience, I'd have to say. Like you were saying, I didn't want to be put in that label, disabled person, because I felt like there was so much more to me and so much more to my other brothers and sisters that have disabilities, other friends of mine. And I've known people who focus too much on their disability, and it was a turnoff. And I had a lot of friends growing up, and in college I was pretty well liked. And the subject of my disability wasn't something I was trying to hide, but it wasn't something that I would just blatantly start talking about because I really didn't think about it. It just wasn't something that was... It was part of me, but it wasn't who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what drew others towards me. But like you were saying, you have those people who are like, well, you can be such a great advocate for people that have your disability or that need that person who can advocate on their behalf and bring awareness to those of us that don't understand what you're going through. And the more and more I thought about it and prayed about it, I realized that there's, for me, like you said, there's other things that you're passionate about, and for me, that passion is being extremely pro-life and
Mm-hmm.
being, I'm very, very faithful to my faith, and I wanted to speak on pro-life issues, but you forget that sometimes being pro-life isn't always just about being anti-abortion.
Absolutely.
It's being pro-life for any stage of life,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing the dignity of the human person from the moment of conception until natural death,
Mm-hmm.
And everywhere between.
Mm-hmm. So, you had mentioned that growing up, that your disability wasn't something you were ashamed of. Um, Now, I know that you've watched a few episodes of our show, and as you probably noticed, that you are one of the first women that we've ever interviewed with disability. So, why don't you give us a bit of perspective? What is it like to try to navigate being a woman in an able-bodied world? What is the experience of disability like from a woman's perspective?
Well, as you can imagine, any woman's going to have insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't exclude people with disabilities. In fact, I think for me, having a disability, it made it worse. In college, I was afraid that, I'm sorry, not in college, in high school, I was afraid to raise my hand in class because my hands didn't function
Mm-hmm.
like other able-bodied people. And it was embarrassing. It almost looked like a chicken wing, so I was embarrassed by that. And I let my muscles almost atrophy because I wasn't using them, because I
Wow.
was afraid to look different,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I wanted to be someone who guys found attractive, and I didn't feel attractive. And it was, in college I overcompensated. I had started dressing really nice. I was doing my hair all the time. I would never leave my dorm without makeup on, and my guy friends would always tease me because they'd ask me to actually come home not wearing makeup, and I told them I wouldn't do it, because the people that I went to college with, it was a very casual school. It was a great school. I went to Texas A&M University and majored in biomedical engineering. And the girls went to school, went to class in pajama pants, and their hair's pulled back in a bun. And I wouldn't do it. I was just too scared to look less than my best. So, because you never know who's looking at you.
Mm-hmm. I think I can definitely resonate with that. I feel like often I don't get to have the same privileges as an able-bodied person because I feel like everything about my physical presence is always going to be scrutinized. So I always feel like I have to shower. I have to be well articulate. Everything. So I definitely resonate with that. Now, you mentioned just the insecurity, but what has been your experience with dating?
Well, dating was actually very difficult for me. I did not really have a boyfriend until I was 24.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time. Every guy I had ever had a crush on or liked in that way, and if I dared tell him, oh, well, I just see you as a friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I could never tell if it was because every guy would always say, well, you're very pretty, but I just don't see you that way. So I didn't understand because I always thought, well, I'm really outgoing. I'm a lot of fun to be around. You say I'm attractive, but what is it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's got to be my disability. So I just kind of would get really self-conscious on that note. And it was hard for me to even flirt with guys because I thought, well, I'm always going to be put in the friend zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is. And I always was in the friend zone. In fact, I had more guy friends than I had girlfriends most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was just thought of as one of the guys. You know, but not, there's Christy who hangs out with us, but not Christy who I would consider dating.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I realized that, you know, I am who I am. I am who God created me to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to change. And somebody's going to like me for me or they're not going to like me. And I just had to exude that confidence. And when I started to exude that confidence and try not to focus so much on my insecurities because you can push people away. And I would ask guys when they would turn me down, is it my chair?
Mm-hmm.
Is it my chair? And they don't really know what to say at that point. They're kind of tongue-tied.
Because that's kind of a lose-lose either way.
Yes, it is. It is. So they're, oh, no, you know, but really it is. I had an experience when I was 19 with somebody that I liked, and I had told this guy that I liked him, and I thought that he had liked me too.
Mm-hmm.
And his response to me, well, you know, guys like the average Barbie type girl, one who can give them kids. And I was only 19, so I wasn't ready to have kids by that point anyway. But, you know, as far as I know, there's nothing wrong with me in that department. So.
Yeah, but all of a sudden, it's like, that's all of a sudden a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just came, no one had ever blatantly said that to me
Mm-hmm.
before. And so it became a real issue, and it's something that I still struggle with, even with my husband, and I'm married.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be just so much of our cultural definition of womanhood is linked to the ability to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And in my small understanding of women's issues and struggles, that is always the primary one. If I could kind of delve into a little bit just about what your understanding of body and sexuality has been like as a woman with disability. I know for me, so much of sexuality within the realm of disability has been more of like this fetishized thing or something that like women will generally only approach and talk to me when they're drunk. Like, and then all of a sudden they're very curious and they want to know all these things. So what has that experience of kind of delving into trying to understand sexuality within a feminine context for you?
Well, you know, I always thought that if I was a guy, I would probably have it easier. Because it seems like women are more understanding and more, you know, I've seen more guys with disabilities having girlfriends than I saw girls with disabilities having boyfriends. And if they did have boyfriends, their boyfriends were disabled as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let's see, that's a really good question. What's my idea of femininity and sexuality when it comes to, you know, it's funny you're asking me this question because this was the exact question I was asked when I ran for Miss Wheelchair Texas.
Well,
and it was the most difficult question I could think of. But as a Christian, I can only answer it from a Christian perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is that personhood is not defined by the body necessarily. I mean, yes, the body is, I mean, a human person is a soul, a human soul joined with a human body.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take off my arm, am I any less human? No. If you put me in a wheelchair, I'm not any less human. You know, it's the whole of me that makes me human. It's the whole of me that makes me a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and doing the will of God, understanding God's plan for me has made me I guess you could say that to me describes femininity. You know, femininity comes from God, comes from doing the will of God. Um, and it was just trying to reconcile that God sees me as a whole person. God doesn't see me as broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas I had people, I'm sure you've had this happen to you too. Can I pray for you that God will heal you?
Yeah.
And I find that so offensive in so many ways because it's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why do I need to be healed? You know?
Yeah, or I know for me, it's not so much I'm not in need of healing, but my deepest needs have nothing to do with my body. It's more of like it's more. I have some like deep heart things.
Yes.
There's some, like I have like deep needs of friendship,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, you just focusing on this as my deepest need actually is what's keeping me away from community, and that's my
Right.
deepest wound. Um, um, I will say that I most certainly would agree that it is much easier to be a man with disability than a woman. Um, you know, I struggle with my daily routine, and I don't really have to put a whole lot of effort into it. But I always think every time I'm in the shower, thank God I don't have to shave my legs
Yeah.
and all of these things. Now, I'm sure that you, like me, probably feel a lot of pressure to attain to certain kind of constructs of what a man or a woman should be. Um, when you find yourself just struggling with those daily routines, how do you deal with that hardship of like maybe you can't shave your legs on your own or I don't know what your daily routine is like, but how do you deal with that and not let it suddenly define you as a woman?
Well, shaving is a good thing. I mean, it's something I have to do, yes. But being a woman too, and thank goodness pants are always good. You don't always
Go
have
pants.
to, yes, wear skirts and stuff. I find myself always wanting to be very trendy, and so I think I drive my caregivers nuts because I always want to go get my eyebrows waxed
Mm-hmm.
or get my hair done, or have my makeup on just right, and do my hair just right, and you know, I watch what other people wear, and I watch TV, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. But my body type doesn't always fit that because I have a bit of scoliosis, so I
Mm-hmm.
sit a little slumped, and when that happens, my clothes won't look like you would see in a magazine, and that can be hard on me, and I have swelling in my lower legs and feet
Mm-hmm.
because of sitting all the time. My circulation is just not very good, so I can't wear the cute shoes and stuff like that. And that's probably one of my biggest um, things that I'm self-conscious about
Mm-hmm.
is trying to fit in because, like you said, it's easier for men because you don't have to shave all the time. If you want to have a beard, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can wear baggy clothes, and that's totally acceptable. For girls, we need to wear something a little more form-fitting and stuff that's doesn't look like I'm wearing a muumuu,
Absolutely.
And it is tough. I know it's tough for my husband too sometimes because he goes shopping for me. Because he's really good at picking stuff out.
Way to go, man.
I know.
Way to go.
Yeah, guys aren't the best at paying attention to what girls like as far as clothes, but he's about as attentive as they come, and picks out the cutest things. So he really helps me out in that department. When I go shopping with him, he's like, "No, Chrissy, you'll look great in that. That's fine. You should pick that outfit. If that's something you want to wear, we're gonna make it work." And so I'm really blessed to have a supportive husband who just sees me as just being a normal woman.
Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I've just recently started dating, and I know that you've seen that interview, and that's something to me that not dating, having an 8 year gap, I forgot how great it is just to have someone that's like really affirms me as a man. Um, Now, you've been married for about 3.5 years now.
Mhm.
Um, how how was how was it for you guys to kind of navigate first dating and just kind of engaging relationships while in the context of disability?
Well, I was actually more concerned about it than he was.
I find
You
that to
know,
be true with me too.
Tim was, it didn't bother him. I mean, I know when we first met, one of the first things he asked me is if I could have kids or if I was able to get married, which kind of, when he asked me if I could get married, I was a little offended because I'm like, well, why? You know, why would you ask me that? And, you know, you can bring that up to him when he interviews with you. He'll laugh.
I'm sure he'll love that.
He'll laugh. But no, I think it was just good for him to know what he was getting into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this something? Because both of us are of the belief that we don't date, we court,
Mm-hmm.
and so he wasn't going to date me just for the sake of dating me.
Mm-hmm.
If he was going to jump into something, it wasn't like he was going to try on dating me like he would try on a pair of shoes. He wanted to know, okay, before I commit to even taking you out on some dates, I want to know that this is something that I can ultimately do.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't a problem. Now, I would try and throw all these things at him. Now, look, if you marry me, this is what you're going to have to expect, and this, and this, and this. And nothing scared that guy. Nothing scared him. And it just blew my mind because I could be as open and honest as I needed to be. And he was fine with it. Where in the past, any guy that I've dated, I almost kind of had a piece of me that I kept secret.
Mm-hmm.
I never told them that I had caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just didn't want to be seen as being someone who they'd have to constantly take care of.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something that I've run into. I remember it still stings me to this day. One of my best friends was a roommate of mine, and I was having a tough day where I had trouble putting on my shoes and braces, and then it spanned in about 10 months where I couldn't put on my own shoes, which I mean I know you can imagine like those types of things are the most devastating.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden you lose an ability.
Yes.
And I remember him saying, CJ, you need to get a wife so you can have somebody take care of you. And that was the most gut-wrenching thing just about anyone's ever said to me because I'm like, no, I don't need a caretaker. I need a wife. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really even need a wife. I want a wife. Um, so, obviously, having less ability than others, there's an element to your relationship where your husband, your lover, is also your caretaker. What's that like navigating, and is it a struggle?
That's a good question because, yes, I mean, it is. Now, when I watched your show with your girlfriend, something that you said, actually, my husband and I were watching it together, and you said that you constantly apologize, and that's totally me.
Yeah.
Any inconvenience that I cause, you know, and I'm very, very worried about being a burden on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I grew up in a family where I felt like I was a burden. I felt like, you know, my parents were really good about treating me just like everybody else, but doing extra for me here and there. Sometimes if I needed a drink of water, for instance, obviously I couldn't get it from the cabinet and fill it up, so they'd almost roll their eyes or hug and stuff, and so I always kind of felt like I'm causing too many problems. And it just became a habit that anytime I need to ask for help, and I would stop asking for help. I stopped asking for help altogether from friends or anything, and they would see me struggling to try to do something, but I was trying to do it on my own, and they would, well, why don't you ask me?
Because it costs me something when I ask you.
It costs me something, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've lost friends that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was afraid that, ultimately I would lose a husband, and that would devastate me. And so Tim has really been good about trying to reverse that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's ever going to go away. It never. I told Tim that this is a mindset I've been in since I was a kid. It's a hard habit to break. I don't see it happening. I'm always going to be like this. I'm going to overthink people, and I do. I overthink, and then I apologize obsessively for asking for the smallest things, and it drives people crazy. But it's just who I am. So there is that element of insecurity that comes to play, and Tim having to take care of me, as well as just be my husband.
Yeah, I know that I watched the show called Push Girls. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's basically about 4 women. They're all paraplegics, but it's about these really, attractive beauty type models that kind of just are in wheelchairs and have everyday life. And one of them was talking about how it's a struggle to let her boyfriend help her with things because almost your body loses sexiness.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, has that been something you encountered, or is it just more like you almost have to separate the medical needs of your body from the kind of the sensuality of your body?
Well, and that's another good question, because in this relationship it's much different, but a boyfriend that I had prior to my husband and I meeting was actually his roommate was in a wheelchair, and he took care of him, but he worked for the government too, so he was in Washington D.C., worked in politics. And when we dated, he had said to me, he's like, my greatest fear is that if I were to marry you, that I'd be desensitized because of all these, I'd have to see you in compromising positions, I'd have to dress you or help you with these things, and I would be desensitized on a sensual level. And that was really hurtful to me.
Yeah. Because
I had never really thought of that. Because I don't think that could happen. That's not me. If the situation was reversed, I don't think that would be something I would ever have thought about. So I almost felt like, in that regard, I wasn't being seen as a whole person. I was just being seen for
your value as a sexual entity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my husband is the exact opposite, because he sees me for me, and the fact that he can help me with things, he sees as a gift. In fact, he gets jealous of my caregivers.
Wow, that's something I've never heard of.
It's not jealous of them per se, but their time with me.
Yeah.
I know if he could, he'd spend every second of his day helping me. That's what he wants, because to him that brings us closer. It's that gift and giving and receiving relationship. Those of us that have disabilities forget sometimes that we're in a really unique situation, because whereas it's difficult sometimes to ask for help and accept help because we want to be independent, we're giving others the opportunity to serve. And that is serving them.
Yeah, I mean, something that I'm finding with this very new relationship with me is Alicia and I had almost the exact same conversation just the other day, just about a lot of these insecurities that I have that I wasn't so much aware of, but something that I've realized with even the last few days is I can't expect to have the deepest relationship possible if I'm constantly withholding parts of myself
Right.
and letting them be a part of my life and share my life.
And sharing in your struggles.
Yeah, and it's just like, why would I want to withhold a vulnerability from the person that I want to be in everything?
Mm-hmm.
So I have two more questions for you. They're both pretty tough. One is with every obstacle you see um, um, ahead of you, where what do you see and hope for your marriage?
Really just that we will grow, and our ultimate goal for each other is to see each other in heaven. So, just to help each other grow as people. And I'm very hardworking. I have a job. I own my own company, and um, the two of us just want to. We want to have kids eventually,
Mhm.
and I think we just want for each other what any able-bodied couple would want. I want to get to a point where I don't have to rely on him as physically,
Mhm.
for every physical need that I have, and that's a struggle I have because whereas he wants to be involved in everything, I want him to be able to have his life outside of me too.
Mhm.
And so it's a balancing act because I try to rely more on my caregivers for things that I physically need, and to free him up to work and do what he needs to do, and he just pulls in a little tighter. No, I want to be able to do those things. No, I want to do those things.
Hmm.
So it's trying to learn how to balance, and that's still something that we haven't gotten quite down yet, but hopefully we will.
I mean, go figure. Crippled brothers and sisters aren't very good at balancing.
True. That's so true.
So, for young men, young women, those who are dating, those who are about to get married, those in marriage, what is the advice that you would like to leave for everyone watching?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you said just don't hold anything back. Be honest and open, but don't put too much emphasis on your disability because if that person is with you, there's a reason. That person sees you for more than that, sees you for who you are. And it's so easy to be introverted and scared that you're going to overburden somebody and make them, I guess turn them off.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, then that's not the right person. Then obviously that person isn't for you. But if you throw everything out there and you don't scare them, that is probably a good thing. So I just say, and it's hard. It's hard to, especially for young women in their 20s and approaching the big 30, I remember for me, I wanted to be married by age 30 because I was scared that I'd get to an age where I couldn't have kids anymore. And then we're always facing our biological clock. Men aren't, but I did get married by age 30, actually. So I'm actually 34, and I got married when I was 30. So that kind of worked out for me, but not everybody's that fortunate or blessed. So just be yourself. Just enjoy the time you have. It's a fun phase. It's fun to date. It's fun to be in a relationship and to allow someone to love you. And I just would say allow that person to love you. Don't try to scare them.
Mm-hmm. That's a big lesson to learn. Well, thank you so much. This has been one of the biggest pleasures of interviewing anyone ever, and I'm really sorry we didn't get more time to be neighbors, but I just wanted to give you a blessing of I hope you have an awesome time in this new stage of your life of moving to Dallas, and if you're ever in town and you want to be on Cerebral Conversations again, I'm sure people will die to have you back.
Well, thank you. It's
So,
been great being on your
thank
show.
you so much, and everybody, this is Christy Landwehr, former Miss Wheelchair Texas.
Yep.
Yeah, she's amazing. All right, well, I'm sure Ron and I will like to say goodbye, so we'll see you guys soon. Well, Ron, that was quite the interview.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah. Now on to some other business. We got some mail.
Yes, we did.
For those of you that don't know, which if you don't know, that means this is your first time watching the show, you can email us at our personal email account here at Cerebral Conversations, which is cerebralconversations@gmail.com. And we got a email from Marcia. And she wrote, "Dear Cerebral Conversations, as a parent with mild CP, age 54, married with 7 children, not kidding, my husband is able-bodied. I was inspired by your video." She watched episode 20, which was our interview with my girlfriend Alicia.
Mm-hmm.
She was inspired by our video, but also upset. As a person who worked in disability rights in the early 80s, I don't know why you would keep referring to yourselves as crippled. I know it is hard to navigate in our world, whatever one's level of functioning, but it is important to believe you have something to contribute to the world and that you have every right to strive toward marriage and whatever goals that you set for yourself. I would be very interested in maintaining a dialogue with you and would be excited to offer my perspective as well as to Ron. I worked with my mayor's office in the late 70s and attended Bernard College. I am particularly interested in CP and how it affects us as we age and what we can do using natural remedies for spasticity. Also, having able-bodied children gave me a unique perspective. Looking forward to hearing from you, Marcia. Well, looks like we got taken to task.
Yes, we did.
So we use the word crippled.
Mm-hmm.
But why don't you explain why you use the word crippled?
I use the word crippled as a choice. It's sort of like an empowerment for me, not to make it a derogatory term, so I use it in a positive manner. And also, I don't feel like any of the other words describe who I am as a person, because I don't feel disabled. I don't feel special. I don't feel physically challenged. I don't feel like I should have any other pedestal to stand on, as it were. So I use crippled just because that's what I feel most comfortable using, and that's what I feel best suits my personality.
That's generally how I feel. I mean, I just don't like the other terminology. I feel like the political correctness approach, it kind of perpetuates this idea that, like, everyone who has disability needs to be treated with kids' gloves and, like, we're super sensitive about things. Crippled just seems to make sense. It's like, oh, like, yeah, my legs don't work. Sweet. Awesome. My body doesn't work the same as yours. Awesome. And I think the starkness of it kind of, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, which I think is somewhat of a healthy thing. When you kind of break somebody out of that kid glove mentality.
I definitely agree. I also find the other terms, a lot of times they're condescending just because of the nature of the context in which they're used. Like we're somehow below everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, the only other term that I think I like is when you just state, I'm a person with disability, like that. That makes sense, and that's a term that I use in certain situations.
Right.
I think the most important thing is that when we use that term, that doesn't mean like that we're like casting it upon everyone with disability.
No.
We do use the term crippled brothers and sisters. I mean, but if it's not a term that you're comfortable with, by all means, use whatever term you would like to use.
I highly encourage you to use whatever you feel comfortable with because it's your life and you're the one that's going to have to live it, so...
Yeah. For further resource on this particular topic, we actually did a show about it. I believe it's episode 5. You can check it out. It should be somewhere over here or over here, depending on if you're watching it on the YouTube channel or if you're watching it somewhere else. But check out episode 5 when we kind of delve into that. And we also would like to really thank Marcia for just writing us. We don't get a lot of emails, but when we do, we really appreciate it. And once again, if you would like to email us and take us to task, share your story, ask some questions, you can do that at cerebralconversations@gmail.com. You can also check out our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/cerebralconversations. And we have a Twitter.
We do have a handle.
What is that handle?
The handle is @CerebralConvos.
@CerebralConvos. You can also check out my personal blog, The Running Search, at cjcampbell.tumblr.com. How can they get a hold of you?
You can help me fight the vampires at Facebook by looking up Ron Jackson.
If you're a Facebook gamer, get on that. Help him fight the forces of darkness.
Yes.
So that'll be all for Cerebral Conversations episode 27. So until then, keep it cerebral.
Peace.